Hello, I'm Ombardini He/Day, the Computer Games Promotion and Marketing Assistant at Manchester Met University. Would you like to introduce yourself with a name and what year you graduated in?
Yeah, so I am Alex Brooke. Hello. I graduated in 2019 from the Computer Games Technology course, which was the precursor to computer games development.
Can you briefly tell us about your job role and what led you to pursue this job position?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit of a mixed bag. So I am a PhD student at Manchester Metropolitan. I'm also a demonstrator at Manchester Metropolitan, which is essentially a precursor to lecturer, that sort of thing. Like I teach in classes ultimately. I also run my own indie games studio, really tiny little one called Iteration Games.
Oh, nice.
In terms of what led me to pursue each of those things, so I've always loved the creativity that comes with artistic disciplines. I've always loved the really logical side of mathematical and computer-based disciplines, and obviously games pull those together really, really nicely. So studying games in general was a really natural fit for me. Teaching has then sort of interweaved itself into that. So a little bit of the demonstrator sort of side of things comes in there. And the PhD studentship obviously goes along with that. And if I want to continue teaching, then that's something I need to do. And ultimately, it's good to do research, which is cool. In terms of having my indie game studio, that's also just something I've always wanted to do. Obviously, I'm really excited about making games, so the opportunity to do that in my spare time is something I always kind of wanted to do.
Nice. So, what aspects, specific aspects of your education do you think were the most valuable in helping you get your job in these industries?
So basically everything. As much as I said, I really liked the logical side of maths and computing. Before going to university, I couldn't code at all. So obviously, anything to do with actually creating games or anything to do with doing a PhD in computer science, that's a really important thing. So getting an education at university was a massive thing for that. Obviously, you can learn to code outside of university, but the structure and the guidance and the opportunities that come with studying at Manchester Met ultimately allowed me to get to where I am now through those. So yeah, ultimately everything that I learned at university is kind of what led me to where I am, whether that's coding, whether that's project management, whether that's anything to do with teaching as well. I've learned through Manchester Met.
So, how did you land your first job, and can you walk us through the application and interview process?
Yeah, so I did some part-time work helping at the university. When I was in my third year of study, I was helping teach in the first and second year classes in little bits here and there for little bits of money. But that sort of followed on to my first proper job, obviously doing the PhD. The interview process for that was ultimately the job was advertised. I was recommended it by my course leader at the time, and ultimately I needed to put in an application with a project proposal to the university and essentially say, hey, I would really like to do this. Here's my ideas for what I could do. And so there was an interview that followed that up with kind of looking at what I would be able to bring to the table based on my experience. Ultimately, the experience that I had from doing the course that I did at university is what got me that role.
Any challenging parts with transitioning from being a regular university student into becoming a working industry professional?
As silly as it sounds, ultimately just being more dependable. So turning up on time a lot more often than I did when I was a student. Preparing ahead of time a lot more consistently, especially with the PhD, things like setting my own deadlines and trying to stick to them. So a little bit of not even just project management in terms of a project with other people, but managing my own time and managing projects that I'm working towards. And obviously that helps with the work that I do on as part of Iteration Games as well. If we are working on something that we want to get done in a certain amount of time, then obviously I need to be able to stick to some sort of deadline with that. Obviously that I can play about with a little bit more, but the PhD in teaching, it's definitely been self-management. I think is the biggest challenge I think I've found.
Are there any specific skills or tools you learned during your studies that directly contributed to you getting your first job?
Yeah, so my PhD is games related. So it's looking at multiplayer expression in expression in multiplayer games. So being able to even just make a game at all was a massive part of like why I was considered for the role. Obviously, being able to do something like making a game in Unity, that made that a really easy transition for like going from someone that was interested in the project to someone that could actually do the project. Especially my final year at university, I studied and did a project on something called evolutionary algorithms, and they directly fed into the application for PhD. So that's kind of a direct contribution, I guess.
How important was your portfolio in securing a position? And what tips would you give current students about creating one?
I was in a fortunate enough position where I didn't really need a portfolio to get into my job. So you can imagine a PhD, they definitely want to see that you've got the grades and the background, but there's no portfolio situation there. So I was quite fortunate to not have to need that, which is very fortunate because my portfolio was not very good. But I think having spent some time with people in the industry, talk to them about what they look for, and ultimately what I look for in students and what I try to get them to move towards is a portfolio that has finished games in it. And that's not to say it's all big games. I don't think people should be spending hours and hours and hours every day, every week, every month for years to make an absolutely massive game that they can put into their portfolio. I think it's really important to get really tiny finished games out past the finish line, get them up on Steam, get them up on itch, and essentially show people that you can take an idea, even if it's small and a little bit rubbish, and ultimately turn that into something. And I think that really helps for quite often people will ask, if I'm a programmer, how do I show off that I can do that through a portfolio? And ultimately, if you're not wanting to show off the artwork and the level design and that sort of thing from games, you need to be showing that you can make something that works. So yeah, a portfolio that's full of really small finished things, I think is really good.
Did you participate in any internships, game jams, or side projects during your studies? And did these experiences impact your job search?
Yeah, so the people that ended up becoming the sort of first group of people that were Iteration Games, including myself, obviously, we took part in multiple university-hosted game jams, and obviously we brought that forward into what became Iteration Games. So we then, as part of that, took part in a competition called Transfuser, which is a UK government-funded competition that essentially gives some money to small teams that have recently graduated from university and get them to get started in the games industry. So it wasn't directly a part of my studies, it was ever so slightly after, but taking part in Transfuser, I was still able to access university facilities, I was still able to get advice from the people that work at the university, obviously all the lecturers and staff that work on the games units and courses. I think if I didn't have the experience that I had from taking part in Transfuser and as a part of that, my time at university, I think I would have struggled to be able to show to people in my interview that yes, I can actually finish a project.
Anything you wish you had done differently during your time as a student that might have made any job searching easier?
I think for where I ended up, I probably did okay. I think if I was aiming to get directly into the games industry as someone in an established game studio, I think I would have struggled because I would have liked to bulk out my portfolio a little bit more. So, as I said before, really small games that I'd complete, even if they were just things that I'd made in a week. So, yeah, just doing smaller projects over time alongside my studies, I think would have been really good. Even just things where over the summer, doing little game jams and building up my portfolio then, and then getting the advice from people that work at the university when I came back in the like September and October months.
What advice would you give current students or recent graduates who are struggling to break into the games industry?
I think if nothing else, keep working on games. Build up your portfolio. Do something that essentially shows that you're excited to make games. If you are applying for jobs day and night, and essentially not doing anything that is showing off that you still want to make games, then it's going to be really hard to put you ahead of someone that is coming to them and saying, "Hey, look, I've been working, I've been applying for jobs, but I've also been working on a game in my spare time, and I've actually put something out there, even if it's really small things." I think that's really important.
So thank you very much for joining us today. And
well, thank you.
See you later.